On Channel 4 now, the last in the present series of Sign On.
Hello, welcome again to Newswatch. Today we devote the whole programme to Northern Ireland, where what people call the Troubles have been going on now for over 25 years. We'll have a fresh angle on it though, because we'll be looking at how the Troubles have affected deaf people.
Oh, they've affected us in many ways, especially clubs and gatherings. When the Troubles are bad, deaf people are afraid to go out, having to travel in buses and cars. When the Troubles were very bad in the 1960s or 70s, one deaf person was shot. A soldier was shouting at him to stop while he was running. He didn't know he was being shouted at. He was shot in the back and down he went. Apart from that one case, no other deaf people have been injured so far, which is a relief. Northern Ireland is a beautiful country. You can go for a week and not see any of the problems. But if you live there, you never know what's going to happen. There might be a bomb one night, there might be a shooting. So I think deaf people, I agree with John, I think deaf people have become more withdrawn. They stay at home and watch TV more now.
John Carberry and Bob McCullough. More from them later in the programme. If, as Bob says, deaf people stay at home and watch TV more, there's still no escaping the Troubles. For instance, the bombing of a fish and chip shop in Belfast's Shankill Road by the IRA in October, which killed 10 people and injured many others. And the grief of families who lost their loved ones.
I hate them. What they've done. I've destroyed my child's life. Other people involved yesterday. Children, women, innocent people shopping, innocent lives taken.
Events such as the indiscriminate killing of 7 people, 6 Catholics and 1 Protestant, in a pub in the tiny village of Greysteel by members of the loyalist Ulster Freedom Fighters.
He said, they have all been shot. Our families have all been shot. I ran out when I came to the bar, where I found 5 dead bodies, one of them being my father-in-law. He was 81. A simple, good-living, kind, loving father to us all.
And expressions of outrage at such events from politicians, military leaders and policemen such as Sir Hugh Annesley, Chief Constable of the Royal Ulster Constabulary.
These are the scum of the earth. They have totally lost any indication or direction that they thought they were going upon. The depraved acts they have, as a colleague said in Belfast, they have a bloodlust, and some of them certainly appear to be psychotic killers.
TV has also shown the desperate attempts of politicians to find a solution. But what's it all about? It seems hard to understand and even try and make any sense of it. But that's what Newswatch is here for, and we'll do our best. Here's Tessa with some of the history that led to the present Troubles.
The problem of Northern Ireland can be seen as similar to many other lingering problems connected with land, race and religion. It has its origins centuries ago, in times when we'd like to think the world was a different place. times when what were known as great powers saw nothing wrong with trying to conquer and rule territories weaker than themselves. In Ireland's case, the great power was England, which had also conquered Wales. For hundreds of years, the rulers of England tried to subdue their neighbours across the Irish Sea. This became easier when England united with Scotland as Great Britain. By then, religion was part of the conflict. Both Scotland and England had become Protestant countries. Ireland remained largely Roman Catholic. One way the British tried to strengthen their hold was to send thousands of settlers to take over Irish land. These Protestant settlers were concentrated in the northeast province of Ulster. Until 1801, Ireland had its own separate political identity and 2 Houses of Parliament. Then it was merged in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. But any hopes that this would make the Irish feel more united with Britain were doomed. As the 19th century progressed, the majority of MPs elected by Irish constituencies to the Westminster Parliament were in favour of Home Rule for Ireland. There were also outbreaks of violent resistance to British rule. After the First World War, from 1919 to 1921, was a period known as the Troubles. A guerrilla force, calling itself the Irish Republican Army, fought against British occupation. By 1921, the British government was willing to sign a treaty that saw the creation of the Irish Free State. But the Protestants of the northeast were determined they would not be part of a separate united Ireland. Before the war, they had threatened civil war if this came about, with the slogan, "Ulster will fight and Ulster will be right." They now persuaded the British government to keep 6 of the 9 counties of the province of Ulster as part of the United Kingdom. The British province of Northern Ireland came into being. This is what lies behind the present Troubles. The Republic of Ireland has never given up its claim to the 6 counties. The majority in Northern Ireland, about 750,000 Protestants, mostly remain loyal to the United Kingdom, hence the Unionists or Loyalists. The minority, about 600,000 Catholics, mostly wish to be part of the Republic of Ireland as one nation, hence the Nationalists or Republicans.
Most people now agree that throughout much of the history of Northern Ireland, the minority Catholics suffered gross discrimination in areas such as jobs and housing. The present Troubles really began in 1968, when the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association and other bodies organised marches to protest against this discrimination. These marches were attacked by loyalist groups and on occasion even the police, the Royal Ulster Constabulary. In August 1969, British troops were sent into Northern Ireland to keep the peace, to protect the minority as much as anything. But in the end, the presence of the troops alienated many Catholics. Earlier this year, News at 10 reported on the feelings of ordinary people towards the soldiers in their midst.
There's no way, really, of avoiding them. They're on foot patrol among high street shoppers and in the fields and hedgerows of rural Ulster. 19,000 regular troops in all, a reassuring presence in the aftermath of a terrorist bomb, on view from behind the blinds and curtains of Ulster's homes, from over their garden gates, and very often in their gardens as well. A child's curiosity, a father's acceptance.
You go in everybody's garden, like, it's just, you just get used to it, you know. You're not doing any harm, like.
Here specifically, in fact, to prevent harm. But there are divided opinions on whether they should be here and what would happen if they went.
Good bloodbath.
I think it would be open warfare.
Hell that loose.
That would be.
War.
We can't tell. You shouldn't even be here because they're not on a peeping road.
The army went in 24 years ago following days of rioting across the province. They were welcomed by the whole community, including Catholics, who believed the troops would protect them and bring political change. Along Belfast's Falls Road, Catholic women handed cups of tea across the barricades. But one image came to symbolize Ulster's tragedy. Alice Rooney's 9-year-old son was shot dead by a stray bullet. A young squaddy escorted her through the barricades to arrange the funeral. Mrs. Rooney is still grateful to that young soldier, but both she and her husband believe little Patrick's death changed nothing. Like many Catholics, they now want the army out.
I think a lot of people have thought when they came in, like, this is it. It's going to all... They're all going to be protected and all this here, you know.
But it didn't turn out that way.
No, it didn't turn out that way. I think it turned out worse.
That's not the way the majority see it. Sharon and Frank Leslie, once caught in terrorist gunfire, only feel safe in the city centre knowing there is an army present.
In our city the way it is, I would rather have them there than for my children to come in here and be maimed in a bomb or whatever.
Whether people believe in a united Ireland or a united kingdom, what concerns most of them above all is the safety of their families. And this has been the dilemma for the British government. If they pull the troops out, they fear even worse killing on both sides. But as long as they stay, they're seen as an occupying force by the minority. The IRA, who present themselves as the successors of the original Irish Republican Army, can use that as propaganda to win support for their cause and their campaign of terror. In part 2 of the programme, we look at the possibility of a political solution to the crisis, and we find out more about how deaf people have been getting on during the Troubles. Join us after the break.
Earlier, 2 special guests told us about some of the practical problems the Troubles pose for deaf people in Northern Ireland. John Carberry is Training and Development Officer with the RNID in Belfast. For the past 10 years, Bob McCulloch has been writing a column called Deaf Talkabout for the Belfast Telegraph. When they came over to talk to us, they had more insights to offer. Hello, welcome to the programme. Now, the 2 of you come from very different backgrounds and had very different upbringings. Can you tell us how that's affected you?
Well, I had a Protestant upbringing. I went to a Protestant school. I had Protestant friends. But as I grew up, I became deaf and went into the deaf community. And I found my attitude changing. I found that I didn't think of myself as a Protestant anymore, just as a Christian. And I found that the neighbours in my street, the Catholics, were good friends with me. So now, looking back, I feel that my upbringing didn't make me bitter at all. I was a bit different from Bob. My upbringing was a Roman Catholic upbringing. I never met anybody who was a Protestant until I was about 12 or 13. I grew up in a real trouble spot. I went to a deaf school, and I was brought up with Catholic friends, and I grew up using Irish Sign Language. Then, when I was 12, I moved to a school in the north, and that was the first time I'd met deaf people who were different, who were signing something different, British Sign Language. And I couldn't work out why they were signing in a different language until I discovered that they were Protestants. And then I realized that people like themselves and people like myself were all no different. It's just a label, really, that you get given at birth, but you're no different from each other, in fact.
But if members of the deaf community in Northern Ireland have had different upbringings, like yourselves, how does that affect their relationships and their perspectives on the political scene?
Well, I'm married to a woman from a different background and religion to me. At that time, the Troubles were at their very worst, and it wasn't easy for the 2 of us. We didn't feel safe to court together. We could only meet once a week because of our families. It wasn't easy for them. There was a lot of pressure. We couldn't stay any longer, so we thought we had to move to London for a few years. Then we came back and got married, settled and started a family. We find that a lot of deaf people in Northern Ireland are in mixed marriages with different religions. But they get on very well living together, and I think that's great. No bad feelings at the moment. Well, I think most deaf people follow their family. If the family's strong Protestant, they want Great Britain. If the family's strong Catholic, they mostly want links with Ireland. But most deaf people don't fight each other. They just accept that it's family tradition.
Now, Northern Ireland and the South have very different sign languages, don't they? What are the relations like between them?
Well, we have a very good relationship. The North of Ireland and the South of Ireland do use different languages, and they are different, like a foreign language. Our BSL and their ISL are completely different. I'm learning ISL because I felt ashamed of myself going over to Dublin and not being able to communicate with the people there. They could use BSL, but I didn't know ISL, and I felt that I really must learn, to be fair to them.
So you often go down to the South and you're learning their language, ISL. But in the North, don't you have people, particularly Protestants, who don't want relations with Ireland, but with Britain?
I feel that we can have peace in Northern Ireland when the extreme right and the extreme left come together and agree a compromise. I also feel that the South of Ireland must give up their claim to Northern Ireland. At the same time, our extreme Protestants must learn to accept some Irish culture. In Hearing Society, there are some very sensitive feelings about working for a united Ireland or remaining under Britain. But in the deaf community, there's very little talk about a united Ireland or union with the United Kingdom. Not many deaf people are involved in politics. But on the hearing side, there are a lot of sensitive areas at the moment, a lot of disagreements and bad feelings about how to work together. Not all Northern Irish deaf believe in a united Ireland. Some have very strong objections to a united Ireland. But we feel that now there's a new climate. Things are changing. Deaf and hearing people are fed up with the fighting, and they want peace.
Bob McCullough and John Carberry. Deaf people are not the only ones fed up with the Troubles and desperate for peace. This past month has seen more peace rallies in Northern Ireland than at any time since the 1970s. Some of the biggest were held on the 18th of November.
The people of Northern Ireland forgot about the politicians today as they turned out in their thousands to clamour for peace. In Belfast, up to 30,000 gathered, emptying shops, offices and factories.
We want no more killing. We want to hear no more sounds of bullets. We want to hear the roar of silence.
At the stroke of 1 o'clock, silence did descend in Belfast, in 15 other towns, and in schools across the province. At the rally in Londonderry, a face in the crowd, Martin McGuinness of Sinn Féin, who claimed today to have talked with government representatives.
That was an early hint of the contacts between the British government and Sinn Féin, which this past week led to fierce political arguments. For the government to be talking to Sinn Féin would seem, in a sense, remarkable. Sinn Féin is the political arm of the IRA. Gerry Adams, Sinn Féin's president, was recently seen carrying the coffin of an IRA bomber. Adams is banned from entering Britain. He's not even allowed to be heard on British television. As in sign language interviews, his voice has to be dubbed by an actor. Yet just days after Mr. Adams carried the bomber's coffin, the government sent this message to Sinn Féin.
If, as you have offered, you were to give us an unequivocal assurance that violence has indeed been brought to a permanent end, and that accordingly Sinn Féin is now committed to political progress, by peaceful and democratic means alone, we'll make clear publicly our commitment to enter exploratory dialogue with you. A first meeting for exploratory dialogue will take place within a week of Parliament's return in January.
Sir Patrick Mayhew, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, explaining the contacts with Sinn Féin to the House of Commons last Monday. It led to fury among many of the Unionists. Ian Paisley, leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, said the government had previously been lying about not talking with the IRA. The largest Unionist party, the Ulster Unionists, remained quieter, perhaps recognising that some kind of dialogue, even with terrorists, is inevitable if peace is to be found. Traditionally, they support the Conservative government, but if they feel that the IRA, or the Irish government for that matter, is to be given too much say in the future of their province, that could change. But talks between the Irish and British governments, such as those that took place yesterday, are a crucial part of any move towards a settlement that will satisfy the cry of the people for peace.
A banner at one of the peace rallies suggested some comparisons with other countries, which gave grounds for optimism that old enemies could in the end achieve some kind of accord. Historic agreements have been reached this year regarding Palestine and South Africa. In August, when the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin shook the hand of Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, it was probably a harder thing for him to do than for John Major to shake the hand of Gerry Adams. For years, Israel regarded Arafat simply as a terrorist. Now, they agreed to hand back territories to the Palestinians. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela spent 26 years in jail, charged with being a terrorist. Now, President de Klerk has reached an agreement which will almost certainly mean that Mandela will become president after elections next April. But it would be foolish to think that everything will now be sweetness and light in either of these cases. There is still bloodshed between Jews and Arabs in Palestine. In South Africa, when the Mandela de Klerk deal was announced, on the black side the Zulu leader refused to recognise it, and on the white side one extreme right-wing leader gave this dire warning.
Today is a beginning of confrontation and in the end a war, not the beginning of a new peaceful South Africa.
A grim reminder that when dealing with deep historic divisions of this kind, there are no easy overnight solutions.
A pessimistic, but perhaps realistic note on which to end our last Newswatch of 1993. For the time being, may we wish everyone, whether you're watching in Britain, Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, a happy Christmas and a more peaceful New Year.
We'll be back in the spring with a new series of Sign On. Till then, goodbye.
Goodbye.